King Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, had many lovers throughout his long reign. Among them was the Duchess of Fontanges, a striking young lady-in-waiting who entered the royal court at just 17. Her youthful beauty caught the king's attention almost immediately, igniting a brief but memorable affair that would leave its mark not only on court gossip, but on the fashion of an entire era. The Duchess of Fontanges, whose real name was Marie Angélique, was born in 1661 into the prestigious House of Lucile, an influential noble family in Auvergne. From a young age, her exceptional beauty was already apparent. For noble women of the time, beauty was a major advantage in securing an advantageous marriage. With her stunning looks, finding an outstanding husband among the local aristocracy would have been an easy task. However, her family had far greater ambitions. The Marquis and Marquise de Lucile set their sights on Paris and the royal court. Like many ambitious noble parents of the era, they dreamed that their remarkable daughter would enter the Palace of Versailles, form alliances with the highest-ranking nobles of France, and, if fortune favored her, catch the attention of the king himself. Such a prospect would be nothing short of a leap to the pinnacle of power. After all, Duchess de la Vallière, one of the king's earlier mistresses, had neither a prestigious lineage nor an illustrious background. Yet, through her alone, the entire La Vallière family was elevated to noble status, receiving a duchy and vast lands. Her successor, Madame de Montespan, further demonstrated the transformative power of royal favor, propelling the already distinguished House of Mortemar to unparalleled influence and dominance at the French court. In 1678, after witnessing Angélique's extraordinary beauty, one of Marquis de Lucile's cousins decided to take his young niece to Paris, seeking an opportunity to introduce her at court, exactly what her parents had been hoping for. It is said that before her departure, Angélique had a strange dream. In it, she stood atop a solitary mountain, surrounded by dark, menacing clouds. When she recounted this dream to her confessor, he interpreted it as a prophecy. This mountain represents the great and radiant court that will bring you immense glory, but if you ever stray from God, misfortune shall befall you. At the time, Angélique did not fully grasp the meaning of these words. Like many young girls swept up in the excitement of a new life, she quickly forgot the warning. By October 1678, Angélique had successfully entered the household of the Duke of Orléans, the younger brother of King Louis XIV. She became a lady-in-waiting to the Duke's wife, Princess Elizabeth Charlotte of the Palatinate. In an era where beauty was a woman's most powerful asset, Angélique's breathtaking looks soon captured the attention of Versailles. She became the talk of every salon, and all who saw her unanimously praised her rare beauty. Her hair is a very light brown, almost red. She has a fair complexion, a beautiful and slender figure, melancholic eyes, exquisitely shaped lips, and perfect teeth. She is taller than average, with an air of nobility and a queenly grace. Such glowing praise had not been heard since Madame de Montespan, nearly a decade earlier. But time had taken its toll on Madame de Montespan. Her youth had faded, and the king's affections were waning. More and more, Louis XIV turned his attention to the gentle and understanding Madame de Maintenon, who served as governess to his children. For Madame de Montespan, this was a critical moment. If she wished to regain the king's favor, she needed a plan, and Angélique might just be the perfect tool. At a court ball, Madame de Montespan spotted a strikingly beautiful young girl, and more importantly, noticed that King Louis XIV could not take his eyes off her. Wasting no time, she discreetly inquired about the girl's background. Father de Choisy reassured Madame de Montespan, saying, "She may have the beauty of an angel, but alas, she is as dull as a sack of hay." Beautiful but unintelligent. precisely the combination Madame de Montespan needed. Beauty would enchant the king, while naivety would make the girl easy to control. She intended to use Angélique as a pawn, leveraging her to drive a wedge between the king and Madame de Maintenon, ultimately drawing Louis XIV back to her side. Under Madame de Montespan's influence, Angélique quickly caught the king's favor. To test her willingness, Louis XIV sent one of his closest confidants, Duc de la Rochefoucauld, bearing a carefully selected gift, a pair of diamond earrings and a pearl necklace, to sound out her intentions. But the Sun King had no idea that Angélique had been preparing for this moment since childhood. She had never envisioned herself marrying an ordinary nobleman and living a quiet life. Her sole ambition had always been to become the mistress of Versailles. Duc de la Rochefoucauld returned with good news and swiftly arranged the first secret meeting. On a winter night, while courtiers were engrossed in gambling at the salons, Louis XIV disguised himself in plain clothes and quietly slipped out of Versailles, heading for the old royal palace in central Paris, the residence of his brother, the Duke of Orléans, where Angélique lived. At that moment, the Duke of Orléans and his family were away at Versailles, leaving behind only Angélique, who had feigned illness to remain alone. By candlelight, the young and breathtaking Angélique played the perfect game of coy resistance, her shyness only adding to her allure. At last, years of careful preparation had led to this very moment. It is said that a pamphlet was later circulated in Paris, vividly describing how King Louis XIV treated the bedroom as a battlefield, where, amidst tears, sweat, and blood, he conquered the sobbing young virgin. The booklet even called it the most difficult battle the king had ever fought. Perhaps it was this sense of conquest that drove Louis XIV in April 1679 to formally introduce his new favorite to the queen. At the same time, he publicly granted Angélique a staggering monthly allowance of 100,000 livres. At this point, she seemed to be just one step away from completely replacing Madame de Montespan. The king was rarely so deeply enamored. He began to take more care in his appearance and hosted lavish balls in honor of his new mistress. At these events, he even dressed in matching outfits with Angélique, further flaunting their romance. With the king's favor, she quickly became the most sought-after woman at court. Duc de Saint-Aignan, as well as the famous poet Jean de La Fontaine, dedicated poems to the king's new love. Completely immersed in this whirlwind romance, Angélique basked in the glory of her newfound position. During a hunting trip in the forest of Fontainebleau, a gust of wind accidentally disheveled Angélique's hair. Thinking quickly, she tied a silk ribbon around her forehead and decorated it with a few feathers. The king was enchanted by this impromptu hairstyle, praising her ingenuity and insisting that she keep it on for the evening. Thus, a new hairstyle was born, the Fontanges, named after Angélique's later title, the Duchess of Fontanges. It quickly became the defining fashion trend among noblewomen and swept across Europe. Before we continue, let's take a moment to discuss the Fontanges hairstyle, perhaps the most enduring legacy of Angélique de Fontanges. The hairstyle she accidentally created was originally a simple updo, where the hair was loosely gathered into a small knot on top of the head and secured with a silk ribbon. Over time, however, this style evolved into a more elaborate, towering structure, adorned with lace and satin bows, eventually transforming into a rigid, exaggerated wig that became the defining trend of European noblewomen. As Marie Angélique basked in the king's favor, she gradually lost herself in wealth and ambition. The innocence she once had upon entering the court vanished without a trace. Growing increasingly arrogant, she indulged in extravagant spending and even showed blatant disrespect toward the queen. She went so far as to publicly use an 8-horse carriage, a privilege reserved exclusively for the queen. Madame de Montespan's plan had completely backfired. She never expected that the king would develop genuine feelings for Marie-Angélique. In a desperate move to counter this rising threat, she turned to her longtime rival, the Marquise de Maintenon. Seeking an alliance, she confided in her, saying, "The king has 3 mistresses. Officially, it's me. In reality, it's her. But in his heart, it's still you." Her implication was clear. If Marie-Angélique was not removed, both of them would inevitably be replaced. The Marquise de Maintenon was swayed. Although she had always outwardly projected an image of indifference to power, deep down, she was unwilling to let go of everything she had gained. After all, how many people in this world can truly regard power and status as meaningless? She and Madame de Montespan joined forces to pressure Louis XIV. However, the Sun King found himself in a difficult position. Caught in the throes of passion, he responded, "Madame, do you expect me to cast aside love as easily as one removes a coat? You clearly know nothing of what it means to be in love." His reaction took the Marquise de Maintenon by surprise. She had never imagined that the king would be so deeply devoted to this young woman. It seemed inevitable that Marie-Angélique would soon replace both of them. Now, only one final step remained for her to secure her position, bearing the king a legitimate heir and having her name recorded in the official registers of the Parlement of Paris. In 1679, Marie-Angélique became pregnant for the first time. However, by the end of the year, she gave birth to a stillborn child. During her treatment, doctors employed the widely practiced bloodletting therapy, which further weakened her health. In early 1680, after a period of recovery, Marie-Angélique returned to court. However, her health remained fragile. The inadequate postpartum care had left her suffering from frequent bleeding, making it difficult for her to share a bed with the king. The court's sharp-tongued wits mockingly remarked that she had been wounded in service. Despite her condition, in April 1680, Louis XIV bestowed upon Marie-Angélique the title of Duchess of Fontanges and granted her an annual pension of 22,000 livres. The following month, the court departed from Fontainebleau, and although she was running a high fever, Marie-Angélique insisted on traveling with the king. She dressed elegantly as always and rode in her extravagant 8-horse carriage, brazenly disregarding royal protocol. Her entourage included maids, servants, exquisite clothing, lavish jewelry, and even expensive furniture. Determined to maintain her allure, she accompanied the king on hunts and danced at court balls. Not long after, Marie-Angélique suffered another miscarriage. Having lost 2 pregnancies, she followed medical advice and temporarily withdrew from court life. She sought refuge at the Abbey of Chelles, where her sister served as the abbess, hoping to recover her health. Over time, she seemed to regain her strength. Louis XIV personally visited her at the abbey. However, just a month after the king's departure, Marie-Angélique discovered she was pregnant for the 3rd time. In March 1681, Marie-Angélique went into premature labor. She gave birth to a stillborn child and was left bedridden, her condition rapidly deteriorating. Upon hearing the news, Louis XIV rushed to her side, only to find that she was at death's door. Tears welled up in the king's eyes. Holding his hand, Marie-Angélique whispered her final words, "I die happy, for I have seen my king cry for me one last time." On June 26, 1681, Marie-Angélique de Scorailles passed away, just days before her 20th birthday. Her untimely death shocked the court at Versailles, and suspicion quickly fell upon Madame de Montespan. The rumors intensified as her passing coincided with the infamous affair of the poisons, leading to widespread speculation that Madame de Montespan had poisoned the Duchess of Fontanges. However, an autopsy revealed the true cause of death. Marie-Angélique's right lung was completely decayed, her liver was abnormally enlarged, and fluid had accumulated around her heart. Today, historians believe that her death was likely linked to complications from pregnancy, possibly due to retained placental fragments, which would explain her prolonged hemorrhaging. Another possible cause could have been a rare form of uterine cancer or tuberculosis. Like many noblewomen of her time, Marie Angélique fell victim to primitive medical practices, outdated surgical techniques, and the lack of effective contraception. Her body was already weakened after childbirth, yet she conceived again before receiving proper treatment, ultimately leading to her decline. In her memory, Louis XIV donated 6,000 livres to the abbey, ordering that prayers be said annually for her soul. Thus, a legendary beauty vanished as swiftly as she had risen, her life as brilliant yet fleeting as a firework illuminating the night sky.